Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Emily. I'm a consultant here at Blue Sky Strategy Group, and I'm joined today by Professor André Lecours from the School of Political Science at the University of Ottawa. Thank you so much for joining me, Professor Lecours.
You're welcome, Emily.
Excellent. So today we're going to be talking about last night's French leaders debate. So to open up, what do you think were the key takeaways from last night's debate? And did you think there was one leader who performed better than the others?
Yeah, well, first of all, on what was discussed, the surprising thing is that President Trump didn't come up as much. The debate opened with that very issue, right? Managing the relationship with the US. And I guess contrary to what had happened during the campaign so far, then other issues were brought up for the entirety of the debate. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me. It was a surprise to Mr. Carney because he hasn't had to speak to a host of different issues, as is usually the case in an electoral campaign. But I thought he did okay. I mean, his answers were kind of short. He sometimes has difficulty explaining his ideas very clearly in French, but I thought he did okay, especially because, I mean, expectations were quite low, right? Like people understand that, his French isn't that great, and there was no great expectation for him. So I think for Mr. Carney, really the objective was largely fulfilled. I don't think it was for the other candidates. I mean, Mr. Poiliev did well, but it's hard to know. It's hard for me to think of who he could have convinced exactly that wasn't already convinced amongst Francophones anyway. And Mr. Singh was French is very good, by the way. Was very dynamic, but had a couple of strange things going on. Like he kept wanting to talk about healthcare for starters, which of course is a provincial responsibility, and so especially in French in Quebec, that seemed really odd to want to talk about healthcare. He attacked Mr. Poilievre a lot, which to me was strange strategy, right? Because don't you want NDPers who have fled to the Liberals to come back? Whereas if you attack Mr. Poilievre, well, I think you might be helping the Liberals. So that was a little strange. And then maybe the strangest of them all is he kind of towards the end there he criticized the host for his management of the debate. So that was a little weird. And Monsieur Blanchet did very well, but of course that was expected. He's a great speaker in French. He knows all his files. He's been at this a long time. He can explain Quebec positions, which he knows inside out very well. So again, the bar for him was high. It probably met it, but he probably might not have exceeded it. So it's unclear if that's going to be enough to bring Bloc voters back to many Bloc voters who seemingly have gone the way of the Liberals over the last several weeks, as suggested by public opinion polls anyway.
Absolutely. No, I think those are some really great points. I would say in those that I've spoken to today as well, a lot of people have spoken about Mr. Singh's performance during the debate, like you mentioned, healthcare, as well as his criticizing Mr. Poilievre. Like you said, I think it's a really important point to say that, his primary quote unquote enemy in this election is the Liberals who are taking voters from the NDP. So I think it was an interesting strategy from the NDP to go towards Mr. Poilievre and Conservatives in that way. So I think that's a really important point to highlight.
Yeah.
So, do you think that the debate results will end up shifting any of the party's momentums with Francophones? Do you think that the leader's fluency in French, especially for Mr. Carney, will impact how Francophones vote in this election?
I don't think so. I think, first of all, Mr. Carney's a very lucky man because in any other election, I think that would be a major problem for him. But because of the exceptional circumstances we're experiencing, it seems to me that Francophone Quebecers anyway are thinking that, okay, maybe this time we can have a prime minister whose French isn't great, whose knowledge of Quebec isn't great, because we need some kind of an expert, to deal with this crisis. It's like, okay, we need the best dentist in the world here. Doesn't really matter if he speaks French that well, right? We need somebody who can do this job right here. So this being said, maybe again, after seeing Mr. Carney and Mr. Blanchet, maybe some traditional bloc voters will come back to the roost, but I don't expect anything significant. I don't expect that the NDP can make any gains amongst francophones from last night. I think their situation in both the francophone and English-speaking Canada remains catastrophic. And I think the Conservatives, well, Mr. Poilievre was very clear on things. That's sort of something that needs to be said, right? Like when asked, do we build pipelines? Yes, we build pipelines. And I think Mark Carney kind of said yes to that actually as well. Do we turn back most asylum seekers coming from the US? Poilievre says, yes, we turned them back, most of them. Then he went into, well, only the false ones, which was unclear because I don't know. Everybody has the right to demand asylum, so I don't know how you differentiate the genuine one from the other ones. But I don't think he shied away from, his positions, which, in Quebec is a double-edged sword. I think on immigration is going to play quite well. And on oil and pipelines, not so much. It's funny, Emily, because the theme was energy and climate, but it was really all about energy, and very little was said about the climate crisis, which somehow seems to have disappeared. Which here probably plays into the hands of Mr. Poilievre. So again, I'm not sure that was enough. I think he expressed himself very clearly, but I'm not sure that what he did was enough to sway voters. And I'm not sure that actually there were Francophone voters to be swayed towards the Conservatives. So I'm not sure that he really could have done much more, right? I think it was just, I think for Francophone voters, it's a lot about, again, these traditional bloc voters who have gone the way of the Liberals, are they going to stay there? I mean, that's how I see it.
I think that's a really great point. Do you think you could unpack that a little bit more about the Conservatives not being able to sway Francophones?
Well, I mean, big picture is it's often said that the Liberal Party of Canada has historically been the party of French Canadians, right? So, I mean, there's still something to that.
Yeah.
Monsieur Poilievre also has there's many other things. I think he has a personal style that is, I guess you could call kind of maybe Anglo-populist, a little bit Americanish, that I don't think plays well in Quebec, right?
Okay.
It's like Quebec premiers are typically not Doug Ford-like, right? If I can make that comparison. So I think
that's great.
It's kind of very combative, hyper-aggressive, populist, right? Like criticizing the media, criticizing elites, wanting a small government, criticizing the public service. Those are not things that typically go over well in Francophone Quebec, where actually the state is typically seen in a positive light because it, engineered the Quiet Revolution, maintains kind of the defense of the French language and so on and so forth. So small government, criticizing bureaucracy, criticizing the media, and even this criticizing the elite, I think overall, and Francophone Quebecers tend to kind of maybe appreciate expertise, appreciate some of these things that don't seem to be ranked very high in Mr. Poilievre's register. So it's this breed of conservatives, I think, is a little bit more of a challenge in Quebec than the old progressive conservative, right? The Mulroney conservative, and even I guess the Harper conservative, to me, didn't strike. I think Francophone Quebecers as having that populist kind of tinge that Monsieur Poilievre has. So I think it's for all of these reasons, it's a tough sell. Now, this being said, there's a handful, 10, a dozen of writings in Quebec that are conservative friendly and will probably be held on by the Conservative Party, but making significant gains in the province, I don't think is overly realistic.
Okay, that's really great. Those are some really great insights. Thank you so much. So going back to last night's debate, so there were 5 topics that were discussed: cost of living, energy and climate, like you mentioned, the trade war, identity and sovereignty, and immigration and foreign affairs. So what do you think was the most important issue discussed for voters, and who of the leaders do you think had the best answers?
I think cost of living and immigration, clearly to me, only because I mean the issue of the relationship with the US was already kind of discussed so much, right?
Mhm.
And on cost of living, I mean, I don't think we heard much. We heard that everybody wants to cut taxes at different
Yeah.
rates, but as the moderator said, neither the Liberals nor the Conservative presented any kind of financial framework for their promises.
Hmm.
And actually, the moderator took them to task very strongly for that. Uh, and so we exactly don't know how Mr. Carney wants to, balance the budget, cut taxes, without cutting transfers and to individuals and provinces. It remains a bit
Yeah.
mysterious. Mr. Poiliev had a one-word answer to that: consultants, which I don't know, doesn't sound that convincing to me. Can you all really, really save all this money by not hiring consultants?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the answers I didn't think were great there.
Okay.
On immigration, I think again, the Quebec government has long said that because asylum seekers from the US, 90% of them used to come from the old Roxham Road and now Saint Bernard de la
Yeah.
Côte, but they can end up in Quebec. The Quebec government wants a better kind of distribution of those asylum seekers across the country. So that's, I think,
Hmm.
really important for Quebecers. Um, Here again, we heard mainly positions of principle. And we understand that, the Conservative Party is probably less likely to admit newcomers than the Liberals, or less likely to admit newcomers than the NDP. That's kind of
Hmm.
what we would have suspected before the debate, but that's kind of how that came
Yeah.
out. And with Monsieur Blanchet insisting that the line is that Quebec's capacity for integration is reached and already exceeded. So he kind of repeated that.
Yeah.
So I think this could be a little bit of a Liberal weakness, because I frankly don't remember Mr. Carney's answer on this. It was kind of fudgy, and
Mm.
whereas maybe actually the Conservative have some headway they can make in Quebec, maybe on
Okay.
that issue, because I think that's kind of the feeling right now in the province that
Yeah.
you know I mean, Quebec government says it all the time. So the capacity is reached and exceeded. So I think that's kind of penetrated civil society quite a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Conservatives have certainly been overall discussing immigration numbers and the liberal targets that the previous government had. So I think that you're right. I think that is an area where the Conservatives could really hit home for Quebec voters. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any shifting in polls regarding that.
Yeah.
So I think, we're gonna wrap up here in a couple of minutes. So I think we'll end our discussion looking forward. Tonight is the English leaders debate. Do you think that there are any lessons learned for the leaders from last night that they should take into tonight's debate? And what do you think we'll see out of the campaigns in the next 10 days before the election?
Yeah. So I think Mr. Poiliev, I think, should probably continue on with his nicer guy persona, which he had
Mhm.
yesterday. I mean, he threw in, still came back to the Trudeau government many times, but he wasn't as aggressive as he can be in the House of Commons. So I think stylistic
Absolutely.
wise, I think it's good. And Mr. Carney, the same. And so far for him, is like he kind of looks really prime ministerial,
Hmm.
almost borderline bored, thinking, "Can you get me out of here and back into my office?" Right?
Yeah.
And I think that probably works really well. Because that's kind of maybe what Canadians have an appetite for this time up. I think Mr. Singh needs to be more aggressive towards Mr. Carney. I mean, and certainly in English, to me, there's maybe potential gains there for the NDP needs to avoid almost complete annihilation here. So it's really important.
Absolutely.
And I think, you can go back to the basics, right? Like Mr. Carney said he was supported oil extraction. So, maybe the NDP can say, look, if you're a little bit an environmentalist, think about that. We don't support that. And so we're different that way for
Mm,
out of Quebec voters, right? We're the only party that is taking the climate crisis seriously. So that's probably an angle that he can take. Uh yeah, I mean, again, it's hard because the Liberals are really being big tent, right? Probably more than usual. They had veered towards the left under Justin Trudeau, and now they're veering towards the right, but at the same time, like kind of paying lip service to things like, well, I don't know if it's lip service, but having middle of the road position on issues like Gaza, for example. Yesterday that came up. So you could see very much like the more conservative position from Mr. Poilievre, the more kind of left of center position from Monsieur Singh, and then the Liberals like somewhere in the middle, right? So it becomes a difficult position to attack, but I think that's something that Mr. Singh has to do to bring back some of these NDP voters in the 10 days or so that he has left.
absolutely. I think those are some really great insights, and I'm excited to watch the debate tonight to see the results. Well, we've come to the end of our time, so thank you so much for joining me today to discuss last night's French leaders debate. We'll be hosting another webinar next Thursday, so keep an eye on your inbox for the link to register for that. But thank you again so
You're
much,
welcome.
Professor Lecours. This is a great discussion, and have a great weekend.
You too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.